Changing the name of your church is a big decision. Ask anyone who's ever been through the process and they'll tell you there's a lot of paperwork and administrative complexity involved. Tax and banking and property ownership and insurance policies, those are just a few of the details that have to be worked out when you're making a corporate name change. Of course, there are also logistics related to the property, like your signage. You'll need a new logo and a brand guide for the church, probably a new website. And if you're a creative type, these are actually some of the more enjoyable parts of the process. Now, you might be watching this video because you're considering a church name change or because you've already made the decision to change the name of your church. No doubt that if your church is an older, more established congregation, there are likely to be a lot of emotions involved in making the name change. People are attached to your church, and they're attached to the name. And the process of renaming their beloved church can bring out some heartfelt feelings, making the process more difficult. There are a number of reasons that a church might change its name. There could be a new vision and a strategic plan for the ministry, where a new name can reinforce that new direction. The current name might be connected to a geographic location that no longer exists. I once heard a story of a church called Maple Street Baptist. The city had renamed Maple Street, but the church kept the same name for decades. Sometimes a church might change its name because there's a word or a term in the name that's misunderstood by people outside the church. It creates confusion and it's possibly a barrier for evangelism. I work extensively with a denomination that changed its name, and subsequently many of the churches in that denomination also changed their name to reflect the denomination's new name. Perhaps the church name that you have is similar to another church in your community, and you consider changing the name to avoid confusion with that other church. And becoming more and more common today are churches merging with one another or church adoptions that can necessitate the renaming of a church. Whatever the reason for the name change, the process should be well thought out and all short-term and long-term implications considered. One implication that many churches fail to consider is how renaming the church will affect your local search rankings in Google and other search engines. We call this local SEO. SEO means search engine optimization. And whether you've been intentional about your church's local SEO or not, over time, especially with an older church, you've established an internet presence that will essentially vanish the moment you rename your church. Here's why. One of the primary ways that Google determines how high your church ranks in local searches is based on what are called citations. Citations are directory listings on hundreds of websites across the internet, cross-referenced by Google to verify that you are who you say you are, and more importantly, that you are where you say you are. Some of these citations will have familiar names: Facebook, YouTube, Yelp, Yellow Pages. Others are far more obscure, like Brown Book, Local Stack, Silex USA. When Google indexes your church website for local search traffic, it'll verify the name, address, and phone number on your website, compare that to those details on your Google My Business page, and then cross-reference those other directory listings. Google's looking for details that match perfectly. The more matching data, the more authority you have. When you change your church's name, even by a single word, you create errors in your citations and lose valuable local SEO authority. For instance, if you were to change the name of your church from First Baptist Church of Springfield to Springfield First, every directory must be changed accordingly. Again, some of those will be obvious. You'll change your Facebook page and your YouTube and hopefully your Yelp. But what about all those other citations? When was the last time you logged into your Silex USA account? Here's the deal. If you fail to address this really important aspect of your local SEO, when you change your church's name, you will see your local search rankings drop significantly. I've seen a church drop from the #1 spot in Google to page 2 as soon as they change their church name. Don't let that happen to you. If you've changed your church's name or you plan to change your church's name, make sure that you connect with an agency like Missional Marketing that can help you maintain or improve your important local search rankings with a local SEO service, claiming and correcting and maintaining all of those really important citations.